So the thesis was some higher level thinking you found by reading through the 7 documents. You read and summarized the documents in the first 15 minutes. That's tough. That's some big brain, heavy thinking stuff. But there's another thing you need to do up front. And this doesn't require you to have read or understand the documents really at all. You just need to take this whole prompt, this whole idea, and put it into a greater historical context. Today, we review contextualization in the DBQ. In my class, I call contextualization the Star Wars crawl.
Ugh, dude won't shut up about Star Wars.
Well, I mean, Star Wars is kind of applicable to everything, so. The Star Wars crawl appears at the beginning of the major Star Wars episodic films and puts the story into context. Before the movie kicks off with random spaceships shooting at other spaceships while some people are using space laser swords, it helps to put it into some kind of context. That's what contextualization is. You need to treat contextualization like you're explaining the idea of this essay to someone who's never read the prompt, the documents, or your thesis. So your context is basically trying to take someone off the street and bringing them up to speed on the topic of this essay. In class, I always compare it to the 1993 Oscar award-winning film, Philadelphia. Wait, you haven't seen Philadelphia, have you? Oh my god, it's so great. Okay, watch it now. Pause this video. I'll wait. Right? Oh my god, so powerful. Anyways, did you notice how Tom Hanks' lawyer, Denzel Washington, had a specific style of asking questions? Throughout the movie, he would always say something like, explain it to me like I'm a 6-year-old, or explain it to me like I'm a 3-year-old. Well, that's what the context is all about. Take this rather specific prompt and put it into a greater historical context so that an average person or a teacher at the Reed in Kansas City will understand what you're writing about. And for AP World, that means background. So to put whatever you're talking about into context, you need to give me some background, paint me a picture of this topic. What's going on leading up to this essay so I have some sort of idea as to what's going on in this essay. Now, for obvious reasons, I'm not using the Roman prompt from 2007 because there's no context because you never covered that stuff. Instead, let's go with the 2019 DBQ. Here's the prompt. Evaluate the extent to which the Portuguese transformed maritime trade in the Indian Ocean in the 16th century. I know I tend to hate on the College Board for this or that, or you're too specific here, or they're not specific enough here, but this DBQ was pretty great. If you didn't do this one in class, that's fine. Basically, the documents show that the Portuguese were wreaking havoc in the Indian Ocean. They chased the Muslims and Hindus out of trading in the areas they took over. They monopolized trade. They forced the Muslim merchants to carry a pass, and if they don't, they sink their ships. Basically, the Portuguese are massively transforming trade in the Indian Ocean after their arrival. Okay, but none of that is context. For context, you need to think less about the Portuguese in the Indian Ocean and more about Unit 4, the Maritime Empires. That's right, for your Star Wars crawl, you need to bring the reader up to speed on how the Portuguese got into the Indian Ocean in the first place. And the answer to that is Unit 4. So for this prompt, the Portuguese are in the Indian Ocean transforming maritime trade. Your crawl needs to be the story of how the Portuguese got here. I will tell you, context is generally a low bar point. At the reading, the fancy higher up people use this terminology a lot. High bar and low bar. High bar means this point is difficult to get, like trying to jump over a high bar. Low bar means this point is easier to get, like just stepping over a low bar. So as a low bar point, context will not require you to write a full-page essay on the history of the Portuguese Empire, or a full-page essay on the history of the Indian Ocean trade. But I would argue you need to set this off as its own paragraph, even if it's only 2-3 sentences. In my class, I always tell them
that Clemson football's the best and a bunch of other garbage that no one cares about.
Yeah, but for structuring your essay, you need to stack it like this. First paragraph, thesis. Second paragraph, context. Third paragraph, group 1. Start with the topic sentence, then support that with info from the documents. Source the documents where you can, and put the outside info where it fits. Fourth paragraph is group 2. You repeat what you did in the third paragraph. Fifth paragraph, and on until you're done. So you've already made your claim, your argument, your thesis. Now, it's context time. You need to set the scene. Here are some topics that you could have brought up in the contextualization of the Portuguese transforming maritime trade in the Indian Ocean. Ottoman domination of the land trade routes between Europe and Asia. Prince Henry the Navigator, transatlantic slave trade. The Portuguese Empire in Brazil and Angola. Indian Ocean trade routes. Portuguese navigational advances like caravels and carracks. Vasco da Gama rounding Africa and making it to India. Any and all of this stuff is great. Try to use as much vocabulary as you possibly can here. But Before you start freaking out and thinking like, oh, I gotta write all this stuff and I have to know the history of everything that ever happened, remember, this is a low bar point. Here are the actual 2 examples the College Board gives as acceptable for context. For centuries before the arrival of European merchants, the Indian Ocean had been a center for flourishing trade routes connecting India to East and Southeast Asia, as well as with East Africa, Egypt, and Arabia. The other example reads, Portugal's naval advances such as stronger ships allowed the Portuguese to engage in transoceanic trade. See, not a lot. But the reason I chose this specific DBQ to talk about context is something the College Board does not tell you in the scoring guide. At the reading, we were not allowed to accept any context unless it specifically tied the Portuguese into the Indian Ocean. So whatever your context is, you need to make sure that it's tied back to the prompt. And you don't have to rewrite the prompt here, but you do need to make sure that you aren't randomly talking about history things that are happening in or around this topic. Make sure you're giving context to the prompt itself. In this case, if whatever you're talking about doesn't end with the Portuguese showing up in the Indian Ocean, you're not going to get the point. So when you're Denzeling this point and explaining it to me like I'm a 6-year-old, don't forget to tie it back to the prompt. One last thing, this point is skipped all the time. People don't attempt it. Like, they don't even try. It's just not there. Honestly, this was one of the biggest shocks for me going to the AP reading, is how many people just don't even try context at all. It's a low bar point. It's a gettable point. We're not talking about complexity. Come on, man. We're talking about context. Whatever you do on the DBQ, attempt contextualization. Way too many people just leave these points on the board. All right, so you've done the heavy lifting. You read the prompt. You used the prompt to search for key info in the documents. You briefly summarized the document. You found those commonalities and used those to form your thesis. And now you've put all that garbage into context with Denzel Washington and the Star Wars crawl. Now comes the easy part. How do I actually use these documents in the body paragraphs? I'll see you tomorrow.